Hey everyone, welcome to ALB programming lesson. In the previous 9 lessons, we've learned some basics in Java programming and written some small programs. What is in common in them is that they execute several statements from the top till the end. We can observe closer each step of the process by doing some breakpoint debug. Do you still remember? But real-world programs aren't always that simple. They often execute different pieces of code in different scenarios. Those programs need to make decisions according to the scenarios, not just computer programs. We make decisions all the time. Oftentimes we would ask, do we have class tomorrow? If yes, we go to school. Otherwise, we might stay at home if we want to have a rest. We might hang out with friends if they can. We can play football if we have enough people and if we have football field, and etc. You get the idea. We make decisions after decisions. Decisions can be nested and intertwined with each others. We can do the same thing in Java programming. We can use if-else statements. The syntax is like this. Remember, this if is all in lowercase. There is a pair of parentheses and a pair of curly brackets. This entire block means under this condition, the program will execute this code. This code can be any valid code. It can even be another if statement or another if statement inside another if statement. Java supports nested if statements. But what if otherwise? We can use else statements, which make the program execute other pieces of code. In this example, if this condition is satisfied, this code 1 will be executed. If this condition is not satisfied, code 2 will be executed. Else statement also requires a pair of curly brackets, but doesn't allow parentheses. Both code 1 and code 2 can be any valid code, can be replaced with nested if-else statements. Let's see. The nested if-else statement looks pretty much like this. If condition 1 applies, code 1 will be executed. Otherwise, these whole things will be executed, which is another if-else statement. Here, what it does is that if the condition 2 applies, then the program will execute some logic. Otherwise, it will execute code 4. Well, this will be executed if condition 2 is satisfied. Otherwise, code 4 will be. Similarly, we can see that if condition 1 is not satisfied, condition 2 is satisfied, and condition 3 is satisfied at the same time, then code 2 will be executed. Again, similarly, if condition 1 is not satisfied, condition 2 is satisfied, but the condition 3 is not satisfied, then code 3 will be executed. Just to illustrate my point, let's look at this real-life example, comparing with the pseudocode. If someone has class tomorrow, then he has to go to school. If someone doesn't have class, weather is good, and has enough people, then he can implement his plan A. Maybe play soccer. If he has no class, weather is good, but there isn't enough people, then he needs to do plan B. Maybe go hiking or play tennis. You get the idea. This is what happens when he has no class and weather is good. Alright, if someone doesn't have class, but the weather is not good, then he has to do his plan C. You can also notice I follow the syntax that I've written here. Now, why don't we experiment with some real code that we can actually run and control? Alright, back to our project. the program is required to send email 1 day before the date of the course. In other words, the difference between the course date and current date is 1 day, or less than 24 hours. Then the program will send email. In the previous lesson, we learned to calculate this difference. We calculated the difference into milliseconds, seconds, minutes, and hours, and days. Today we will learn to use this difference to further make decisions with if-else statements. Let's translate this pseudocode into real Java code. We need to follow this syntax. Let's type if a parenthesis. Inside the parenthesis pair, we need the condition statement. We'll write it later. When you type the left parenthesis, Eclipse will automatically type the right one for you. Now, outside the parenthesis pair, type curly brackets. Holding the Shift button on your keyboard, press this key, hit the Enter button. Eclipse will give you the right curly brackets. Inside the curly brackets pair, type the code you want to execute. Now, let's replace this condition with something that program can understand. Our purpose is to send email if the difference between now and someday is 1 day. In other words, we need to compare this days to 1 day. That's easy. All you need is compare the dates with the number 1. Just like this. It means if the days is smaller than 1, then implement the code. We'll replace this code with the one that sends email. For the time being, let's just type some comments. Alright, this is the difference, being smaller than 1. But how the code smaller than or equal to 1? Obviously, this doesn't work. First of all, when we compare two values in Java, we must use double equal sign. The single equal sign is used for assigning a value to the variable days. Change it back to double equal sign. Second of all, in Java, we don't write OR like this. This is not SQL statements. Instead, we type two vertical lines. Holding the Shift button on your keyboard, press this key. Alright, there is another way to write this if statement. Let's comment it out and copy this if statement. We can write it like this. This does exactly the same thing as this. Alright, if this condition applies, the program is supposed to send email. In the next lesson, we will learn to send email in Java. Today, let's just put some Hello World code instead. Let's print out some text in the console. Alright, let's also write down the else statement. There is some error with the else. This is because I typed only the left bracket and the right bracket is missing. Hit the Enter button. Eclipse gives you the right bracket automatically. Let's also fill in this else block with our Hello World code. and print out program should not send email. Save the file, double-click on the tab to get back the Eclipse console, run the program. Well, this current time, it changes all the time, every millisecond. The someday is a fixed date time. Now it's past time. After subtraction, I get this whole lot of negative numbers. We got a problem here. Look at this. Our program will send an email to remind the student to take a class that is already obsolete or outdated. You know, these negative numbers are indeed smaller than 1. I coded the program in such a way that if this difference, the difference between someday and now, if this difference is smaller than 1, then the program will send an email. But I accidentally, secretly assumed that someday is a future time. I assumed it's behind the now. I've never considered this case where now is behind someday. Apparently, it doesn't make sense to remind students about an outdated class as if it's happening in the future. Well, this days being smaller than once can be tomorrow and can be past. I'm gonna eliminate the scenario of the past time. Something like this. Let's turn this highlighted part into Java code. We can replace it with days greater than 0 or days equal to 0. We can simplify this like days greater than or equal to. This is greater than or equal sign. Now let's replace this thing. In SQL you can write like this, but in Java we use AND. Double AND sign to represent AND. Alright, as a software engineer, not only should we know the programming language itself, but also we need to know clearly what goal we want to achieve and at least understand your business logic and requirements and what the code actually means. For instance, we need to be aware that this condition and this condition being satisfied at the same time means the specified date is tomorrow or today. Under this condition, the program should send email. Save the file and run the program. This is the current date time. This is the past time compared to now when I was recording this video. In this case, I don't want my program to send email. In other words, we don't send emails when it's too late or too early. Let's try out the nested if-else statements. Let's do some actions. If it's too early, let's print too early to send email. Otherwise, let's print too late to send email. Let's translate this too early into Java code. It's related to this days. Actually, days greater than 1 means too early. You can pause the video and figure out why. Save the file and run the program. Program tells me that it won't send email because it's too late. Let's try out some other date time. Let's change it to future time. When I was recording this video, it was June 8th, 2018. Let's say someday is June 23rd. After running, this will change a little bit. Let's see. Save the file and run the program. Current time and some days changed to this. In my case, when I was recording this video, it was too early to send email. Now, I'm gonna change the some day to today. Save the file. Let me give you a bonus tip. You can run the program here. Next to the screen button, there is a little triangle. Click it, and you'll see a list of recent programs that I've run before. This is the one that I want to run now, so click it. The result is that program should send email. Let's try out someday equal to tomorrow. Save the file, run the program. The result is that program should send email. Alright, this is how we decide whether or not send email with if statement, if-else statement, and nested if-else statement. In Java code, we write like this. The keyword if, else. If statement also requires a pair of parentheses and a pair of curly brackets, but the else statement only requires a pair of curly brackets. In other words, if statement requires us to specify a condition. In the condition statement, you might need to use some operators like equal to, greater than or equal to, greater than, smaller than or equal to, smaller than, and operator, and or operator, which is here on your keyboard. Finally, let me tell you a little bit about the blank space in Java programming. You can type space here, and here, and here, but not here, or you see an error. If you add a space and separate operators or variables, you get an error. You can not only type spaces, but also line breaks like this. You can also figure out what works and what not. But do you find too much unnecessary blank space will make your code unclear? I'll undo. Well, some people write like this, opening curly bracket right under the keyword if, writing keyword else right below the curly brackets. Some people write like this. There is nothing wrong with it. It doesn't cause errors, neither does it affect clarity. It's just a matter of preference. This is pretty much about if statement and else statement in Java programming. Apart from what we've learned here, I encourage you to do some further research. First thing is the else-if statement. We've learned if, we've also learned else. Now, you can learn on your own else-if. Second thing is the switch statement. It's kind of look like this. You can understand it as an alternative to if-else statements. You can check out how to use it. We won't dig too much into it here. Alright, the third thing is the flowchart. You can search what it looks like in the internet. Go to your browser. In the address bar, type flowchart. Hit the enter button. Here are a bunch of search results. You can visit any of them. I'll go to the first one. Here you can see how flowcharts look like. Alright, here's an example. Problem starts, lamp doesn't work. The diamond shape is equivalent to an if-else statement. This one is like, if the lamp is plugged in and the bulb burned out, then replace the bulb. That's it. I hope you've learned something. Thanks for watching. In the next lesson, we will learn to send email with Java program. I'll see you there. Peace.